All right, Alexander, let's answer the questions from the live stream that we did with Larry Johnson and John Paul McIsaac. And this is coming from Commando Crossfire. Until they become conscious, they will never rebel, and until they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious.
Oh, I wouldn't put it. I'm not as pessimistic as that. I think people are conscious all of the time. They might be misled, but what was it Lincoln who once said, you can fool most people most of the time, but you can't fool everybody all of the time. And I think that's true.
All right. From Jeff Pearson, not hard to believe people abandon good electronics. I'm sitting on 10K of abandoned, paid for new IT equipment. Happens a lot.
I'm sure it does.
Sure. Sparky says, great to see the Duran on Jimmy Dore. Great work. Thank you for that, Sparky. Jeff Pearson says, MAGA until proven innocent. JP. Very well said. Sparky says, most of all the FBI are corrupt or incompetent. The good people retired long ago. Same with most federal agencies.
What I've heard about the FBI is that a lot of the people who work, actually carried out the investigations, the criminal investigations, are still pretty good people, but that the people at the top office and in some of the middle level positions are basically ideological political appointees.
From Jeff Pearson, the FBI has been objectively corrupt since Hoover.
Many people think that. I mean, Robert Barnes thinks that. I mean, I want to say again, I don't think the entire FBI is corrupt, but clearly there are, to say that there are problems would be an understatement. I mean, anybody watching the program would see how big those problems are. Anybody who followed Russiagate would see how big those problems are.
Two Boomers says, hi, Alex and team from Minsk, Belarus. Hello, Two Boomers. Sparky says, Hoover was unethical but not partisan.
I think that's broadly true. I mean, I would say that he had certainly very clear political views. I mean, he wasn't somebody who had much time for, the civil rights movement or parts of what you might call the left in the US. But ultimately, he was about aggrandizing power, and he was, extremely powerful and effective in doing it.
Zariel says, Mr. John Paul McIsaac, thank you for being an upstanding human being and having the courage to speak and show truth to evil.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zariel, for that. M. Wick, thank you for the super chat. Peter Coldman, thank you for that super sticker. Juha says, thank you for your excellent work. You are needed more every day. Jeff Pearson says, dear FBI, the end doesn't justify the means.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, in this case, what are the ends? Stopping Trump? Is that a justifiable end? I mean, if the American people want to vote Trump, surely that's their decision, not the FBI's. So the means are wrong, but so it seems to me are the ends.
And Pedro Rodriguez says, if not the ends, what justifies the means? I think that expression applies very badly, but very badly what people mean is noble ends don't justify immoral means.
That's absolutely true.
CSK4J, thank you for that super sticker. Craig Coffey, thank you for that super sticker. Lance says, excellent work, gentlemen, much appreciated. Anonymous says, who watches the watchers? Sounds like a special purpose council needs to be called to investigate the FBI, fire everyone, and start from the ground up.
Well, absolutely. I think a number of things need to happen with the FBI. First of all, there needs to be a big clear out, both in the FBI and I have to say this in the Justice Department. The Justice Department seems to me to be riddled with political appointees. I don't think there's any question about this. I mean, they acted in a most extraordinary way. I mean, you remember how, I can't remember her name now, but the acting Attorney General, when after Donald Trump became president, basically countermanded, took it upon herself to countermand his travel ban executive order. And we had a whole huge, long legal battle. But that was done from somebody who came up through the Justice Department bureaucracy. So, I mean, it needs to be brought back under control. So the Justice Department needs to be brought under control. There needs to be a proper Overwatch committee to look at the FBI, which also needs to have essentially a cleansing of these people who clearly don't understand what their proper role is. And last but not least, I think, as we discussed in the programme, that the counterintelligence part of the FBI's work needs to be separated from its criminal police work. The two are not compatible, and the one is contaminating the other.
Right. Euro Gabor says, with the laptop from hell and diary from purgatory, Ukraine and Taiwan on the agenda, Kamala is rather conveniently tucked away, enjoying radio silence. Wonder why.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Good point. Very good point. Well, she's probably hoping that she's going to be president before very long.
From Tim Gibson, I don't want hearings. Thanks, but no thanks.
I'm not quite sure what that means. But anyway.
Adam Tanjiro, thank you for that super chat. George Lenormand, thank you for this. Thank you, George, for that. Sparky says, repeal the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Mm-hmm. And Sparky also says, in another super chat, 1996 Telecom Act allowed unfettered government electronic surveillance, as well as allowing previously forbidden corporate news media consolidation.
Absolutely. I completely agree with all of that. And notice the year, 1996. Who was president then?
Jeff Pearson says, a senior analyst, an ethics professor, and published conservative Christian was on every anti-Trump FBI Team Inc., the laptop cover-up, golden rule. From JHS Scott 6 says, thank you for your work. From Eva Lundmark, thank you for that super chat. KZ Gypsy Muse says, please ask Paul and Larry about Robert Davi movie, My Son Hunter. Your thoughts? We actually asked that.
Well, I think we got a fairly long and good answer to that. Yeah.
Yes, we got a good answer. Yes, CC says, is it chance that the coup came at such a pivotal year, the Trump election and Brexit?
Well, I don't know whether or not it was chance. I suspect to some extent it was, but certainly it was very, very convenient. I mean, if there hadn't been the coup, I'm still convinced that Donald Trump would have won the election, probably by a solid margin.
Euro Gabor says, no amount of law enforcement can solve a problem that goes back to the family, J. Edgar Hoover. This reminds me of a certain Clinton, Bush, and Bidenopolis families.
No. Lots of references to J. Edgar Hoover. He was a very clever man. He's just on the cusp of my memory. I just about remember him when he was head of the FBI. And of course, what people don't know is that there was a big personality cult around him when he was there. He was widely talked about. A lot of people in the US admired him, not knowing, the dark side of his personality. So, and he was still a clever man, and he said some very clever things. And what he knows about family, law, and law enforcement, and of course, families in law enforcement in the United States have a criminal meaning. I mean, anybody who follows The Godfather and those will know what I'm talking about. Well, what Ed Hoover had to say about that is, of course, important and relevant.
Kit Burns says, watch the film Official Secrets and a very heavy agenda and 0 days. Be informed.
Of those three films, the one I know is Official Secrets, which is, I can't remember her name, but it was about one of the British whistleblowers. And it's a brilliant film. She was the one who was working at GCHQ and exposed the fact that the United States and Britain were monitoring the communications of Security Council ambassadors. So pretty dreadful things, actually, including friendly Security Council ambassadors. And she was prosecuted, and some lawyers that I don't actually know, but know of, knew quite well from Liberty, defended her, and she won a famous case in the High Court. So that is an interesting film. It's a very, very good film, by the way. But the other two films, I don't know. But Official Secrets certainly does tell you a great deal about the way in which the deep state works in Britain.
Mark Hill says, internet quality gets worse as the infrastructure weakens. It is noticeably worse with each week that passes. Boiling the frogs. Thank you, Mark Hill, for that. Not a banned account says, will Trump finally be arrested this year? Hashtag pride.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying it will happen, though. But after what the president was saying, the current president, the incumbent president was saying the other day about the enemy within, well, I can't help but think that if it was up to him, Trump would be arrested.
Klaus Vatne says, doesn't this show we have been too naive for long and that the deep state has been doing this for long, but it took a Trump to reveal it?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's anything doubt about that. I mean, I'd say that there were some of us who were more naive than others. I mean, I don't consider myself a naive person, but I'd already sensed that there were a lot of things going wrong for a long time before Trump came along. I mean, but I agree that the Russiagate revelations and those we've had from JP, I mean, they take that understanding to a different level.
Edgar, thank you for that super chat. Colberry says, Kofor Black is on the supervisory board of Baltic International Bank. These guys really stick their fingers into everything, don't they?
Yeah. Well, Larry, I think, discussed all that at length.
Yeah. Indigo Jones says, was Kofor Black connected to Mitt Romney's presidential campaign? Larry answered that.
Yeah.
Bella, thank you for that super sticker. Lance says, Mr. J.P. McIsaac, you have been clearly defamed and damaged. Will you take legal action?
Well, he gave us a long and very interesting answer, yeah.
Not a banned account says, is it Ukraine, or the Ukraines?
I always refer to it as Ukraine. I've dropped the "the." I used to use the "the," but I think that it's a country, and I think it deserves to be called by the name that its government politically wants it to be called by, and that's Ukraine. So I called it Ukraine.
Lumpia Logic says, law enforcement serves the owners of the means of production in the West. It's globalists. Why are people still surprised by this?
I think fewer people are becoming surprised, but there's some people who don't want to believe this. A lot of people who don't want to believe this.
Ago says, my question is why the American public is silent. The abuse of power and corruption are clear. Is media collusion so effective, or did people give up?
No, I don't think the American people are silent. I think a lot of the American people are silent, but an awful lot of others are not. There are a lot of people who complain and talk about this, and the number is growing.
From Cursicella, thank you for that super chat. Paulie says, Trump has the virus scam files.
I'm not going to speculate on what files he has. There's apparently going to be a special master going to be looking at all of this. So that may tell us a little bit more about what he does have.
Summer of 1970 says the Rockefeller dynasty's wealth is incalculable. Lumpia Logic says, was there a time the FBI and CIA were not politicized?
I'm going to say this. I think they've always been, certainly the CIA has always been in some ways an inherently political institution, because it was a political, it was never just, and it's important to say this, it was never just an intelligence organization. Right from the outset, it had a political role, which was engineering changes in countries that were targeted by the United States. So right from the beginning, for example, it was involved in staging coups in places like Iran and Honduras, and this was happening in the 1950s, and Guatemala. So, you can't say that it was never a political organization. But I think that previous generations of CIA officials understood that there were red lines, and they didn't try to do this within the United States itself. They didn't try to play an active political role using their institutional base to try to determine political outcomes in the United States. They saw themselves as servitors of the US government. I think at some point in the last 30 years, clearly that's changed. I think the CIA now plays a real active political role within the United States itself. As for the FBI, I think Hoover always was an intensely political animal. I remember him, but one who basically served his own interests. I think what's happened again is that at some point in the last 30 years, perhaps going back to the Clinton administration, the FBI started to see itself as being part of the political struggle and basically as a institution working for one side in the political system.
Elza says, you are the best. No questions left. Thank you for your great work. Thank you, Elza, for that. Cool Roy says, Trump is the American dream. Biden is the socialist nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that, Cool Roy. Paul, thank you for that super chat. Asavet MD says, check my member super chat. Thank you for that, Asavet MD. Dinu13 says, Alexander, you said in your last Q&A that you don't subscribe to Austrian economics. Could you tell one or two cases where Austrian economics is for the real world?
So you asked me that. Well, look, I mean, for one thing, I do not believe that in the unalloyed operation of free markets. I mean, I think I said that briefly in the actual stream itself. I think the government does have a role in economic management. I think it is unreal to imagine that government can never do anything, and that what government does in managing economies is always bad. I think that this is a fundamentally wrong idea. I think Austrian economics is far too doctrinaire and far too absolutist in the way that it approaches economic commentary. And I think some of its ideological conceptions, that if we don't adhere to, pure and unalloyed, old-fashioned liberal economics, we're on some sort of road to serfdom or totalitarianism, is wildly overstated. But these are big topics. It's not really appropriate to go off on a tangent on that, discussing that in a stream that is intended to be about some completely different subject. At some point, perhaps on locals, we'll discuss that. And we are thinking of inviting economists, including Austrian economists. Maybe at some point we could start to explore all these issues more fully, perhaps in locals or somewhere else. But as I said, on this show, I don't think this is really a topic we can talk about, because it's the kind of thing you either talk about in a very brief way, as I've just done, or you can spend hours discussing.
Passion Bohemian says, thank you, gents, for your real information. Please keep up the wonderful work. Saludos, Alex and Alexander. Also, saludos to Larry and John. Thank you for that. Lewis says, consider yourself lucky, JP. You could have found a Biden diary and facing 5 years.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Very good point.
Yes. Scrappy says, JP, we trust you. Thank you for that. Super chat. Missy Kin says, did you guys have fun on Jimmy Dore?
Yes. Great fun.
Yes, absolutely. Joanna, thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says, Bill Clinton brought state-level old boy network corruption to D.C. The corruption may have citizens in mind a little and keep out holes filled when it's just at state level but doesn't scale up.
True enough. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Ralph, thank you for that super sticker. Curious says, God bless you all. Scorched earth on these clowns. Thank you for that, Curious. Liz Steving says, thank you, JP Isaac. You are a courageous man. Sparky says, keep on trucking, JP. Chris, thank you for that super sticker. Larissa, thank you for that super sticker. And Vivian, thank you for that super chat. That's everything.
That's everything. Okay.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for all of those questions. Take care.